The topic of today's webinar is importance of doctors launch. We are looking to, with the help of these great doctors, we are looking to reclaim the private space for peer support and decision making in the modern medicine. What we will get here today, we will explore further the root cause, why emotional exhaustion and stress are rising in modern practice. And I'm sure every one of them can give a lot of stories about what's the root cause here and why this is keep happening in spite of everyone is looking. I think in 24, 45% of the physicians in our country are facing one way or other physician burnout. So every second doctor right now is feeling that. And the second, first is we'll explore the root cause, and then we'll see how it impacts, how administrative burden for these doctors and loss of private space erode the resilience. So we will explore more. And finally, the solution, how trusted community connection restore balance. So we have here Dr. Halow. He's my partner, Dr. Kevin Halow. He will be the one hosting this, and he will be the one managing it. Along with that, we have Dr. Timothy King. He is also our co-partner. Dr. Rao, he's internal medicine. Then Dr. Husn, Dr. Cardiology and internal medicine. And Dr. Soin, finally, he's also internal medicine. So Dr. Halow, please take it here and looking forward at the back end of it.
Okay, so yeah, I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate the panelists being here. So I just want to give everyone kind of like this 36,000 foot view of the project. A lot of you have been here since the beginning, but I thought, well, we'll just take 5 minutes, catch everyone up. So this project really started with a very simple question. And the question is how do you get a physician to go to a meeting? Because they won't go. And over the years, what we found is all the reasons that they gave for physicians not going to meetings aren't really true. Like physicians do care, they do want to be involved, they do want to have a say, they just don't have time. And the problem is that the physicians can't leave their time universe, they can't leave patient care to go to a meeting because they're busy. And so what we found over the years, and when I say years, we've been on this project for 7 years now, it's hard to believe, but this is our 7th year. What we found was that all this dissatisfaction with physicians, the frustration, physicians quitting, as Neeraj says, the burnout at 45%, physician suicide rate at 15%. It all seems to tie back to this idea that says physicians are not engaged. They're increasingly disengaged. They're increasingly isolated. So in order to attack this problem, what do we have to do? Well, what we have to do is we have to bring the physicians back. We have to re-engage them. But in order to do that, we have to communicate with them. We have to bring the meeting to them. That's kind of what the project's all about. And this is our 3rd iteration. I know that seems like a lot, but it took Steve Jobs, 10 iterations to make a Mac. So we're doing pretty well, I think, actually. But the idea being that Clinician Core is this next extension, and Clinician Core is a unified communication platform. It's completely private. It's HIPAA-compliant. It's invite only. Everything's automatically deleted after 30 days. It's as secure as we can get it. And in Clinician Core, there are four platforms that all communicate to each other. HCO is the base platform. And the HCO is basically the intra-organizational communication platform. But it's different because what we do is we take the physician and we put the physician at the hub. So instead of the physician being the hamster on the wheel running and running and running and trying to keep up, we put them in the center of the hub and everyone else is on the spoke with whom they need to communicate. And then our next module is the HCC, which connects all of the HCOs. Again, physician-centric, so that the physician is the center of the communication. And then we have 2 more modules, and then we'll discuss these today, and this is what the webinar is about. It's called the HCX. HCX is an open platform that's not in compliance, but it's designed so that physicians can have these discussions with each other, with vendors, to try and be involved in the business of healthcare. And then the final platform, and we're going to highlight this in the webinar today, is what we call DOC. Because the second iteration of our project was called Doctors' Opinions Count, DOC for short. And so we kept that, and we created this lounge, the DOC Lounge, which is a virtual lounge. And it's a place where physicians can feel secure and comfortable meeting and communicating and connecting. So our webinar today has 4 sections, and we're going to start with our first section. And our first section talks about this idea of the identity crisis and the idea of this provider debate. And the first question I'll throw out there to the panelists is, we've seen this change of people calling from physician to provider, right? Like, that's this administrative context, the EHR context. So how is this, to any of the panelists, how has this affected you morally? Like, Dr. King, are you a provider? Do you feel like a provider?
No, I don't feel like a provider, but I get it. I get everybody looks at me as a provider.
Anyone else? Like, how do you feel about like this sense of professional autonomy when they call you a provider?
So, I think that we need a collective term for people providing, so to speak, the care to the patients, but the whole generalization and including people with far different training than our own, I feel sometimes as if it's part and parcel with scope creep and people with less training sort of assuming duties that are out of their scope because they're now in a group, in a collective term with us. And that's been a little bit hard. I do feel sometimes like I've been stripped of a lot of expertise and a couple of board certifications with the evolution of that term. That said, we need something collective. And, we've done it to ourselves a little bit by bringing everybody else in and allowing them to do more and more of the things that we did with the best of intentions and trying to lighten our load of some of the more mundane things. I think we've fallen a little bit victim to the law of unintended consequences. So it's a hard problem.
Dr. Neal, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think, there's definitely a need to have a title for everyone that provides. I feel that, I work closely with APRNs and PAs and sometimes they make calls that, they don't necessarily have the scope to make, but they're put in that position by, I think, the whole medical complex. We're short-staffed across the nation, I believe, especially here in Northern Nevada, and you have this huge patient population that needs to be seen, and we kind of hand off a lot of that responsibility over. But at the same time, you're handing over, your title as far as a physician over as well, because now you're not able to, see as many patients, let's say, or really meet the needs that are out there in the population.
Dr. Soin, what do you think?
I think in my experience, like that been a short experience, but in our area, a lot of people that we see, like especially the first interaction with any person in healthcare, has been some sort of not a physician, but everybody else. So the idea regarding when they see us is that we are all same. So, and sometimes you just don't want, like, it's hard, people do a good job even when they're not doctors, but at the same time, the information that's being provided to a lot of our patients is very generic, and they have not a complete understanding regarding what's going on with their health. So sometimes you just really have to kneel down and sit down with them and tell them the gravity of the situation. And again, you don't want to put anybody under the bus, but at the same time, I think, people when coming in the room should clarify, what their scope of practice is. And when they're not sure, they should be referring to the right people in the ladder. Like, I think everybody has their place, but definitely I think people are not mentioning their scope, as Neal said. So I think that should be done, at least when people are entering the room. And even as an MD in internal medicine, I do say that, like, that's what my recommendation is. But like if it's outside my scope of practice, I do refer to people who should be answering those questions. So I think
And it takes, so we all know it takes 12 to 18 years, depending on your specialty, to train a physician, right? So do you feel like this idea that says that, okay, I can train half or a third, and that's okay? Do you feel like that takes away from your autonomy as a physician? Does it take away from your title?
I do think, and again, it's my personal opinion, I think the training is very limited on the other end. And it's more, at least in our field, like how we practice inpatient hospital medicine, I think the training initial, what people come in with is very reflexive training, which diminishes what I do when people say, oh yeah, this is this, so you just do this. It doesn't really work like that. It took a lot of years of training to understand like how cells work, like the nitty gritty of the entire thing. And yes, on most days, human body is very resilient, but on some days it is not. And you really need to, use your training to treat these individuals. So yeah, it does take away a lot of what we do, and people just think it's all the same, which I don't think it is.
Just to chime in here as well, I work, like I said, closely with the APRNs, and they round with us. And my experience is the training that they do get is not sufficient. I mean, most of the training they're getting is on the job. It's with us while we're rounding, and you hear about some of the physician assistant or the APRN trainings that go on, and it is very minimal. And so the majority of what they're getting is while they're with us rounding, and then you hope they practice to some degree how you practice.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a link. It was a funny. I commented on a LinkedIn article or post the other day. I think it was yesterday, and it was an orthopedic surgeon talking about the idea of being interchangeable. Do you feel like this shift to providers is a method to try and make you interchangeable with everyone else? I mean, Dr. Rao, what do you think?
I mean, I think I feel like that has been the direction things have been going for a number of years. I mean, I've been in large institutions, tiny institutions, medium institution now, and I do feel like and I've had these conversations with multiple other people in our peer group. The overall direction has been to turn us into cogs that are easily replaceable, with less appreciation for what our expertise, training, and experience make us into by the time we get to this point in our lives. And so that term is particularly offensive to me every time I hear it. But you hate to complain about something without having some degree of like some being able to say what the solution would be. And I don't know how to do that without listing is like, we have a team of doctors and APRNs, NPAs, and the rest of it. I don't know how to do that and have any economy of language. So I don't have a solution for that one, but I do think it has devalued what we do, and I think the general public does not have an appreciation for what the absolute difference in training is. I think that the APRNs and PAs have a ton of value in a specific place, but their training is that A goes to B, goes to C, goes to D, like just about every time. And our training is specifically different from that, is that we're considering the sub one and the Roman numerals and everything down the line while we're going straight down the path.
Dr. King, do you feel interchangeable?
I mean, I don't feel interchangeable, but I get this idea of like plug and play. Recent events in the surgery department at the hospital, it seems like the administration thinks that, oh, this surgeon's not working out, let's remove this surgeon and put another surgeon in, and they're going to be equal. And as we all know, that's not the case. So that's frustrating. It's an administrative thing. I think they look at us as, a surgeon is a surgeon. Everybody's equal, and they don't take into account 25 years of experience and who's good and who's not good. And And that's a big deal in surgery, I think.
So with this idea of burnout, obviously we know it's multifactorial, but Dr. Soin, do you think that losing your identity, do you think that's a reason why physicians would burn out?
And a part of it, yes. Like, you have to sit down with them, like with our patients. You have to explain in a little bit more detail. And the other thing is, then you have to sometimes, not always, but you still have to sometimes kind of talk to them regarding what somebody outside who was, not overly like had the experience of treating something which led to something, and I'm trying to reverse and trying to explain why we are trying to do something. But because people have such relationships with their primary cares and people who have been coming, who have been seeing someone for, let's say, years, and just to say that, hey, this was not a part of it, and things might have changed over the time, and it takes more effort. It's definitely also more rewarding when you are able to convince someone on that end that, hey, this is the next right step. But it adds a lot more time to the day, which
So it's frustrating.
it can be. Yeah, it becomes frustrating sometimes. Yes.
So providers obviously help, but if they're not, if we are no longer physicians and we're all providers, then maybe it's more difficult. Maybe, I don't know.
Definitely.
Let me ask you this. So Dr. Rao alluded to this. So should we, as a community of physicians, should we say, no, we're done. We're going to push back against this. We're not okay with being called providers anymore. I mean, is that something we should do?
I think it has to come, as Dr. Rao said before, with an answer, at least some sort of an answer that what we do with the other side. If you're going to, like, saying that we should not be, and I completely agree, we should not be called all providers, because we are not providers. We are doctors. Like, we train for this. We have spent more than 2 decades, or at least 1.5 decades minimum, like, to get into this, to train, and we're still training. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody on this panel, like, every day learns something, or we make some mistakes, we learn again, and and it keeps on going. So to call us providers with everyone who has not done this and not like gone through this journey, I don't think it's right. I think it's definitely most times it's demeaning, most of the times. Yes.
So one final question on this section, and then we'll move on. But I mean, if we push back, right? Let's say physicians all of a sudden say, no, we're done. We push back. Do you think we can restore it back to where we are physicians? Like, we're the physicians, and yes, we have other people who are extremely important who work with us, other clinicians, whether APPs or PAs or a nurse anesthetist, whoever it is. Do you think we can change it? We can put it back? What do you think? Dr. Neal, what do you think?
I mean, I think the one thing that marks me as a physician is my name badge. We have big blue lettering that says physician on it. I don't know. I think it's almost to the point where it's gotten so, taken away from us. It may be a pretty uphill battle to do, but I do think that, working towards that is not something we shouldn't do. It's just hard to say how we do that. I think this platform is something that will open up that conversation amongst physicians in order for us to, have a viable plan to do that.
All right, so let's go move on to the next section. The next section, we're just talking a little bit about the concept of a physician lounge versus like an actual physician lounge versus this cyber lounge, the doc lounge. So when you think about like the doctor's lounge, right? It's like this area where you get down there, maybe have lunch, maybe get down there for a cup of coffee, whatever. I want to hear everyone's opinion. We'll start with Dr. Rao. How do you feel about taking that lounge and putting that lounge into a virtual space? Would you feel comfortable?
I don't know about comfortable right off the bat. I'm sure I would become comfortable with it. I feel like it's probably inevitable given the way things have evolved in the hospital space. As somebody that's old enough to clearly remember the hospital lounge and to have gotten a ton of work done, as well as finding out about the lives of my colleagues and, building relationships over the years, I very much miss that concept. But I would say that almost anything that gets close to it or tries to approximate it, it would be valuable to me for sure. Because as somebody who spends his entire life in the hospital, that's been one of my favorite things from the very get-go. And as most of us come from academic institutions, we've all spent at least a substantial amount of time in academic educational institutions that focus on collaboration. I think it's gravely missed, and I think it probably affects our care. I still spend a lot of time trying to run into people around the hospital and have that connection, maybe outside the actual room. But it's super valuable to have a space where people pass through. It's essentially considered confidential, probably more confidential than most of us conceive of an electronic social space.
So for you, the lounge it's not just work, it's personal. Like it's a way to catch up with people, check in with people, see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, facial expressions, body language, and finding out something that's not medical about somebody's life and making some connection on those levels, 100% and improves your interaction on a clinical level. So I feel so. Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
I think I'm hearing some feedback. So maybe like if you're not talking, do me a favor and mute your microphone, because that way I'm not hearing the feedback. All right. But it's a way to connect, right? So the doctor's lounge historically is a way to connect. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Neal, how do you feel about it? What do you think? You use the doctor's lounge? Would you use a virtual lounge?
I would. Yeah, I use the doctor's lounge primarily when I'm rounding in the hospital, but even when I'm, in the clinic, we're fortunate, our facility, everything is pretty close. So, jetting across the walkway to go grab something to eat, sit down, and you see a multitude of physicians that are in there, and we all tend to share a patient or two with each other, and so having a discussion about that patient is nice to have in that environment. But sometimes when it's different when I'm rounding in the hospital. I see a lot of the hospitalists and all the other specialties, but when you go back into the clinic, and for those who aren't close to the hospital, it'd be nice to have some connection with the a different physician, the primary care physician, where it's not strictly just an iMessage text message or a WhatsApp message.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's actually a really good point. Primary physicians don't round in the hospitals anymore. So it used to be that if you were an internist or you're a family practitioner, you would round in the hospital. That doesn't happen anymore and won't happen again. So there's a large group of physicians that can't use the physical doctor's lounge, right? I mean, they can't. It used to be like if you would go into the doctor. I'm dating myself here, but if you go into the doctor's lounge, you're going to see, one of the family practice guys who sends you cases all the time. Whatever you're going to talk about. Maybe you see one of the OBGYNs whose kids on your your kid's soccer team, right? I mean, it's this personal connection that I think now that as we've subspecialized ourselves to death, you really don't see it anymore. And you don't have that ability to kind of connect with them in the lounge, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but I certainly have. I mean, our physician lounge is not very packed anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's just not that many people that go there.
Yeah, let me just comment on this as well, just from, I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with a primary care doctor where I'll say I read an echo or a stress test and it's abnormal. And I pick up the phone and call them, and I don't do this all the time, but if it's something important, I will call them and talk to them. And to hear them on the other end, how much they appreciate just that phone call, like that's that disconnect that is no longer there. Like, we used to have potentially conversations all the time about this stuff. And so they're like, yeah, that's how it used to be back in the day. I don't know if I'm dating myself with that, but, and so, having something where it's not, hey, you got to make a phone call, talk to the MA, see if the physician's there. If you have something where, like I said, it's HIPAA compliant and you're able just to send a message to them, hey, this is something I saw in this image or this stress test, that's pretty beneficial for both myself as well as the physician, but also the patient.
So,
Yeah,
doctor,
medicine is a very personal experience. I mean, it is, and I think I definitely agree with you. I think we've lost that personal touch. I mean, Dr. Soin, do you use the doctor's lounge? Do you connect there?
I have a great story. So, I work just primarily on the inpatient side. So, but I know who reads my pathology reports. I never met that person. Same thing for my ENT surgeons or my orthopedic surgeons. You talk to them all the time, but you text them and then they say yes and it moves on. But once you start talking to them on phone or once you see them and you kind of connect to them, there's so much layer. Like, it's just not medicine, but it's because you're here kind of all the time. So you make relationships, even when you are not just, it's about work, but it's about, that's how you kind of talk about what's going on in personal life, how they're doing, and you get to know more about people. And I think that's one thing I love about medicine, just kind of knowing about more and more people, and this makes you a better physician and a better human. So yeah, it's been very nice.
Dr. Soin, when we started designing this app, Dr. Halow said that we should make video as a center of launch or HPOs or HPC. I guess it proves your point, right? When we have so seamlessly, instead of you call, make a video call, and we do this, what we are doing right now, virtual, right? But maybe one is your radiology and one is your orthopedic, and you're having a real discussion, and video is become a seamless, right? Like the next thing. As you do phone call or messaging, now you can do video. Like that's the center of our virtual launch, you could call, or even HP or HPC. Video is our center of this whole strategy of the app we are building here. So,
if that's possible and it happens, because, there's so many patients where just not one specialty is needed. And if you can get two people and, you have a center of and you can get them on the same line without having multiple layers of reaching the, the voice answering service and this and that, which takes eternity most of the times. And when it's, if somebody can be given, hey, we can discuss about this patient, anybody can be given a common time, it becomes so much easier, and you can make your day around that thing and just integrate that in a way. It will be great.
So one is the video doctor, a second is a non-linear, where you can send a message now and then you can reply on your own time, right? Because we all know how busy you guys are. So you don't have to pick up my Dr. Hallow's call right now, right? He leaves the message and then you can reply back on the video call again, right? So that's the two very important thing Dr. Halow was constantly asking, that we have to have this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are absolutely crucial. And like I mentioned before, some of the facial expressions and body language are crucial to the communication, and the nonverbal communication is huge. But I also find the nonlinear stuff that you just mentioned, that's why text is so attractive to us, because it's less intrusive to each other, and you're trying to be considerate of the other person's time, but you have a question that you need to have answered. So texting's very attractive to us. It's just not secure. And absolutely not okay to be exchanging information over. So then there's this constant underlying anxiety about, am I communicating too much or am I not communicating enough? So is that guy with this thing on the second floor enough so the other person knows what you're talking about? Or are you going to get the wrong patient? So, along the lines of having something that we're allowed to communicate through, I mean, that sounds absolutely crucial. And to add the video piece for those times when you get some other information that's nonverbal, all of that sounds important.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, it's the layers of the onion that you say, what have you been doing for 7 years? I'm telling you, man, it's crazy when you think of these layers of like, and for me, I remember I was at the business school, and I spent some time in the business school working on this project, and one of the entrepreneurs there, he runs the entrepreneurship program at UNR, Matt Westfield. He said, what is this? What's your platform? And a couple months later, I came in, I said, it's a time machine. And he said, what? And I said, it's a time machine. It's a time machine to our time universe. And I don't know how, I mean, this is a little bit off track, but, I feel like as physicians, we live in a different time universe. Everything is like now, minutes. We got to do this right now. There is no time to go sit down and have this hour conversation at surgery committee. I mean, we don't even have surgery committee anymore, but when we had it, half the people would leave in the first 30 minutes of the meeting because they have to go to surgery. And it's the same concept with the doctor's lounge, I think, is that when you go into the doctor's lounge, at least for me, I've always felt this way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like it was like we go into our time universe. You got 5 minutes to talk to a physician. That's cool. I ran into Craig Rao and I got 5 minutes with him. That's cool. I got that. And do you guys feel the same way or not? So this kind of leads into our next segue, is the idea of like, when you're in that doctor's lounge, do you feel safe and secure? Do you feel safe that it's okay to speak your mind? Comment, Dr. King, do you feel like you could speak your mind in the doctor's lounge and not get in trouble? You're on mute.
Yeah, for me, the word that comes to mind is organic. It seems like the doctor's lounge is organic, and I've been here long enough to remember the old days at the old hospital when all the, like you guys say, the primary care doctors came in from the community, and it was just safe and organic, and you felt comfortable talking about any and everything. And yeah, it was really cool. I like the lounge. Feel safe.
One of the problems we had with the first iterations of this project was that it was sponsored by the hospital. And in subsequent iterations, we've gotten rid of that, and we've went to this where it's basically our own app that we've created. And there were a lot of people that felt like there was Big Brother watching them. So if you're using this app, whatever it is, whatever app's out there to connect and communicate, but it's being sponsored by the physician, the hospital system. Do you feel like you're being watched? Dr. Soin, do you feel like you would be being watched?
Yeah, there's always a component that you have to like be a little careful with your wording, especially with me. I do speak a lot, so I do feel if it's a common place for like all the physicians, and not just for our hospital, I would say if we are thinking about it as a community space, I think it will be easier if it's owned by the community as compared to an organization. I think that will definitely put most of us at a little more ease than, if it's owned by your own health system, which will have pretty much its own rules also on it. I'm pretty sure that.
So what would make, I would love to hear some feedback. What would make you feel comfortable and secure in the Doc Virtual Lounge? To be able to say whatever you want to say. I mean, this app is HIPAA compliant, end-to-end encrypted. Everything's deleted after 30 days. It's invite only. Only credentialed, qualified physicians can be in the lounge. What else do you need besides that to make you feel more comfortable using it?
No screenshots. There has to be a mechanism where people cannot screenshot the screen.
Okay.
Because if you're going to talk about, even not about just patients, about life or, what you went through emotionally, or like with a patient, and things can be hard. Like, we all have days where things are hard. If people have to be a little more comfortable regarding what they felt and how they felt, I think it has to be completely, secure on that end, that somebody would not be able to take advantage of their, the moment that they went about sharing their day, I would say.
Okay, so no screenshots to keep it completely private. Any other thoughts? Dr. Neal, what other thoughts can you think of that would make you feel like I'm going into this virtual doctor's lounge and I want to be able to I'm the vice chief of staff going into the chief of staff. I want to be able to talk to my medical staff team. I want to feel comfortable doing it. What's going to make you feel comfortable?
I didn't even think of that screenshot, but that is a good point. I think the big thing is for everyone in the actual space to know that, they have freedom to say whatever they want. If there's any limitations in that, then there's breaks on what people are going to say and how they're going to share. Obviously, if it's for me in discussion with other physicians, having administration involvement, I would definitely not want them within that community or space, because I do think that sometimes, even in meetings that we go to, sometimes we bite our tongue a little bit and don't say exactly what we feel. And you walk away from those meetings and you're like, yeah, I don't think this is really going to change anything, because they may not know how we feel and they may not care. But I think if, you have an area where you're able to voice your opinions and share those emotions, then, vice chief of staff or chief of staff is maybe going to listen a little bit more, and maybe things will get done.
Dr. Rao, any comments? Any thoughts? What would make you feel comfortable in our virtual doc lounge? How are you going to feel comfortable?
I'm not sure if you have a graphic you can put on here of me with a tinfoil hat. But I have to say I'm a little bit paranoid about it. But I do think, like, moving on into the current age, like all of us, even old people like me, are gonna have to get used to that. I also think that, the idea that there's a safe space in the hospital, when our middle-sized hospital has facial recognition and cameras everywhere and whatever, the idea that some of these spaces that we feel are super private, may have to evolve too, because I think they may be less so. So I think that screenshot suggestion would be invaluable, because I think that's what gets people out in the larger world of social media and all. It's not the moment, it's the screenshot that gets posted all over the internet. I just think that we'll have to figure out how to get comfortable with it. But assurance is that, this particular space within the program is secure from administration, whatever's only doctors, like some of the segregations that you've already made, and maybe sort of customizable spaces that can be, spaces for mutually elected people, like people that have decided they need this group together, that might be useful. But I think in today's day and age, it's hard to feel completely safe.
Let me just
All right,
add,
so let's move. Go ahead. Any other comments? Go ahead. Go ahead.
When I was in training, we used to have a room. It was not necessarily a physician lounge where you went eat, but where the residents would meet, and we called it the BS lounge. And that's exactly what it was. We would be able to go in there and just unload. And if you're having a hard day, just to be able to unload to someone that has an idea of what you're talking about, that changes the course of the day for yourself, instead of this isolation where you're just sitting in front of computers and thinking about this all the time without having a chance to really vent and say, I wasn't really happy with this, and this is inappropriate, or this is what happened, and this is what I think should have happened. I think that kind of space also helps with burnout. I think it helps with, not taking work home, and potentially even suicide rate, like we talked about.
So if I may understand this, one is, of course, all of us understand the challenges with screenshot, the liabilities and all. But the other thing I like what you're saying is that we should give that ability that you can create your own group with one doctor, all of 6 doctors, right? So that way you can have your own virtual launch. It doesn't have to be all doctors together, but you can create your own groups and vent, or just create some discussion group or whatever, right? Within this virtual doc launch.
Or it could be constructive and clinical too, but it would be of people's own choosing, and you could be secure in the knowledge that it wasn't going to be for everyone.
All right, so this gets a little, this section's a little difficult, and it's it talks. We're going to talk a little bit about this concept of professional isolationism, which we've all experienced. So on any given day, like, you get hounded with some kind of notification, whether it's a text, an overhead page, maybe you're called for a code, people calling you on the phone constantly. But yet, despite the fact that you have all these ways to be reachable, physicians still feel like, the feedback I hear is like, yeah, some days I just want to crawl under a rock, So how do you feel about that? That's like, do you think that all these notifications, all these different apps make you feel more isolated, make you feel more like, I just don't want to do this anymore? I'll start with Dr. King.
There we go. I don't really get, as a surgeon, I do a fair number of cases in a day. I don't really feel that, I guess, as much, because I'm doing, moving on from one case to another case. And I don't really feel inundated by notifications because my phone a lot of times is outside of the room. So I'm probably not the best guy to ask.
How about when you get done with the case and you got to get caught up? Do you feel overwhelmed?
No, I'm not overwhelmed for sure.
Dr. Soin, what do you think?
Absolutely, yes. Especially when you're, holding the phone days. It can be like 5 calls from the floor, 5 calls from the ER. It can be the anesthesia calling for a post-operative observation, admissions. It can be a consult. And I believe every call is important, but there's a lot of stimulation, like if things are, moving at a high pace. So I think in that way, I believe texts and, having a common place where people, like the thing that we're talking about, like a group, like, we have admissions. Okay, fine. Like, we know that this is the admission place. And if I can strategize and just kind of make sure that, okay, which is the acuity and, on which call has to be returned first without going here and there, I think that would be the most ideal. But yeah, it is very overwhelming when you are getting a lot of pings from everywhere, like a call or a text or, so it's, yeah. At that day, you need some extra 4 or 5 coffees for sure. Or, yeah.
Does it make you feel, I mean, like I'm a surgeon, I'm not an internist. How does it make you feel? Like we talk about the concept of burnout as a sign and a symptom. So you feel burnout as an individual physician, but yet we know as a sign, when you have 45% of physicians burning out, that's a sign that something's wrong. So how does all this make you feel, like this fragmented communication, all this stuff going on? How do you feel on any given day?
I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to call my parents. I don't want to see how somebody else who's important in my life, how they're doing. I just want to crash in my bed. And especially on those days where these things are happening, I also wake up the next day much more exhausted as compared to my normal days. So it's, it takes a toll on your next day too. It's not the same day. It's just, and, it's, the problem is, like, I think when we are all trained, most of us have been trained that, never kind of show your anger in a way that, it hurts a patient or it destroys relationship. But I also feel that what happens is in that process that because you're trying to be so nice everywhere, that when you go home, sometimes that niceness completely fizzles off and it's wrong back home. So I don't know, it just, it changes you in the way that you also don't like it. So yeah, definitely burnout for sure.
So your experience is that in terms of taking work home, you don't necessarily take work home, but you take the emotion home.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So you go home with this sense of like, I feel horrible. I feel awful. Even though I've got all these people around me, I just want to crawl in my bed and just leave me alone. Yeah.
But we're not even allowed to say I feel awful and I feel horrible. Like I've never said it to my mom. I've never said it to my dad. Like you're just not like, you just, you take it in. I don't know for other people, but like I do it in that way because I don't want to make somebody else feel bad regarding, even if I had an awful day. So you just kind of sometimes internalize it. It's good to talk about this with your peers because it does help me in the past also. So once you talk about your day, it helps to unload things a little bit.
Dr. Neal, what's been your experience?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, there's days, you'll see, 20, 25, 30 patients in the clinic, and then you go down to sit down to work on some of your notes, and there's 30 phone calls to respond to. And you're just like, I don't even know how to try to even catch up. Like you just sit there and sometimes you seethe a little bit. You're like, gosh, I feel cornered. I feel like I can't punch my way out of this. And then, the whole discussion about trying not to take the work home. It's hard to come home and speak to spouse, a 2.5, 3-year-old about your day in medicine. Like it just doesn't, it's, even you're just trying to discuss, just interactions throughout the day. It's hard to do that with someone who's not in medicine. They don't understand the complexities of what happens throughout the day and how frustrating sometimes the day can be. And so, yeah, no, I totally feel sometimes the same way as Dr. Soin, like, man, I don't want to take any of this home, but I am. And hope I can calm down before I get there.
Now, Dr. Rao, I'm going to add a little layer to this, but I want to hear your opinion. So we talked about, Dr. Neal mentioned the idea of this BS lounge, right? So what do you think? Do you like these, we've all had these days. We've got these cases. I mean, I was helping Dr. Beal with a case the other day and things didn't go the way we wanted them to. It was a tough aortic aneurysm and it was just bad patient pathology. And it just, it was a rough day. It was a rough day for her, rough day for me. So we've all had those difficult cases. How do you feel, Dr. Rao, how do you feel about having like the idea of not just being able to create like groups of physicians, but specialty groups? Like, would it help more if in the virtual lounge, you would be able to create like a hospitalist section or a cardiologist section or a pediatric section? What do you think?
I'm positive that would help. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that have contributed to this or allow it to build. I remember just from when I was a resident, there was a gallows humor saying there's like when the next insurance thing came down and compensation got worse and the rest of it, we just all would look at each other and say, well, we'll just make it up with volume. And you do that, and at some point the container doesn't hold any more volume, but you just do that for years and years. And like obviously that's a larger issue, but that's contributed to my burnout because I have 100% always said, and I still say it today, you guys have all heard me say it, that I absolutely adore the content of my work, but the velocity and the quantity is sometimes unmanageable. So then it's all these other things like everybody was talking about that just make it absolutely unbearable. And so if you had a, not only a larger community, but maybe sub-communities within there that like your specific right or your specific issue would be more appropriate to that group, and be half event, half a constructive, like, what do I do about this? Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be valuable. And that does seem to me like something that Clinician Core will be able to address.
All right, so any other thoughts on this before I move to the last section? So in this last section, I'm going to start out by saying, I just want to ask everyone a question. So raise your hand if in the last year you felt burnout. And when I say burnout, I'm like, I'm done with it. I hate this. I need a new job, whatever. Raise your hand in the last year if you felt burnout. So 50%. So it is really, I mean, it's definitely out there. I mean, are we all like on the brink of suicide? No. When we talk about burnout, none of us, I don't feel that. I certainly hope none of you feel that way. I don't, but I mean, I have felt this is rough, but it's interesting because Dr. Soin mentioned something and Dr. Rao did too. And I want to start out with this as a segue to this last section. So we talk about burnout and we say, as physicians, we're just supposed to be tough, deal with it, right? Like, I'm not, it ultimately rests with me, right? So if it's not an individual failing, if it's, and I don't think it is, then what do you think the role is in like having this peer connection, having this idea that says we have a doctor's lounge that can help stop burnout? Dr. Neal, you think that's possible?
Absolutely. I mean, not to disclose anything from my work as vice chief of staff, but you talk about burnout, you talk about suicide. You also need to talk about the amount of substance abuse that is out there amongst physicians as well. And, we self-medicate. We try to self-medicate with whatever we can because we're told, shh, you don't say anything, right? And so when you don't have, like I said, that BS lounge environment where you can go and say whatever you want, what are you supposed to do? Nothing. You can't. You go and you find these other avenues to kind of deal with the situation.
So physicians find ways to deal with the pain, deal with the suffering, make it go away. Dr. Soin, your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think talking about it helps. And just, when Neal comes to the office or when we all are sitting in our office, just talking about, running things with each other. Hey, everything okay? Or, this thing happened. And sometimes it's good that, your peer is saying, hey, this was not personal. It's just, it happens. And, and sometimes it really helps you to let go of things which you're taking extra personally, which you should, sometimes you should not be, just because it's not an attack on you. It's just how things are going and, things are moving. So having people to talk about your day and, kind of relate that, sometimes it has happened to them, or, they can offer you a piece of advice. I think it helps a lot.
So having that peer connection, being able to reach out to your peers whenever you need help, would you feel comfortable doing that virtually? If you had video, the capable of doing it video, even if it's a non-linear video, do you think it would help?
Absolutely, yes. I think, especially like if you have people who you connect to at your workplace also, or from your residency days, it's just, if you have the right people around you, they always make your day better. I always believe that. And, also puts a smile on your face. So, yeah, I think yes, absolutely yes.
Dr. King, any thoughts?
I agree 100%. Just you and I, we bounce stressful cases off each other all the time, and it's very helpful just in our practice here and in the hospital as well. Running into you guys in the lounge, it's extremely helpful for me. I'm very valuable to my practice for sure.
Dr. Rao, would you feel comfortable like engaging with someone on a virtual platform about your bad day or a tough case or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like everything in the universe, there are limits, and you have to be cognizant of what and where you're divulging things. But of course, I mean, that's the part that a lot of us miss, and Dr. Soin may not even remember so much, but there was a lot of that kind of camaraderie, and I think it's one of my very favorite parts of medicine is the collaboration, the camaraderie, the communication, and in a very in the sort of heavier sense of disclosing stuff that's troublesome or complicated or whatever, having a secure space to do that in would be great. I also think in a purely practical sense, as making the communication easier is absolutely invaluable. Those are the things that screw up our day and make us feel terrible, that we didn't do a good enough job, we didn't finish things, we didn't do things up to our own standards, is because it's just so hard. You get the nuts and bolts of the work done, but then there's all this other stuff, like you were mentioning before, all the pings and the phone calls and the texts you have to catch up with. Making that even one tiny degree easier would take some of that challenge away.
So we're all the more advanced physicians. I won't say old, but we are the more advanced physicians. What do you think? Do you think the younger physicians would take to a virtual doctor's lounge?
Better than we would, or more easily than we would, I think.
Do you think it's? I was, it's funny. I was talking to one of the guys, a friend of mine from the Air Force, and he is very into the American College of Surgeons, and we were talking about just the difference of the younger physicians coming in, the way they train differently, the work hour rules, things like that. But also, and certainly with my experience with the med students as well, they don't necessarily buy a textbook and read it. They're looking at articles online, they're looking at videos online, they're always on their phones, right? I mean, thoughts on that, the younger physicians, because they are our future, right? At some point, we're all going to get sick, right? Somebody's got to take care of us. Although I'm not sure if anyone's take care of me, but they might. But the point is that, I mean, do you think this would be something that the younger physicians would use?
I think so.
100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Dr. Son.
No, I think the medium, how we communicate, has evolved as humans have evolved, right? Like, so information changes hands, but if there's a way it can become more efficient, then it always helps, whether it's the new generation or the older generation. So I think, and plus, I think it also helps to kind of bridge gaps in terms of if you have people from different generations being on the same platform. I think it is actually very valuable because, medicine is a whole lot about your experience, but also about the new stuff too. And, if you're getting people from all different generations, you might just get the best of all the worlds, like the new stuff, the old stuff, the experience.
So a way to connect to the younger generation, to mention them. Dr. Neal, you're gonna say something?
No, I essentially agree with what Dr. Sohn was saying. I think the newer generation, like you had mentioned, they're all on their phone. They're already there, and they're probably already communicating by some degree, maybe not HIPAA compliant. I don't know. There was a little bit of a struggle with some of, let's say, our older physicians in transitioning to EHR. And so, what is that transition going to be like in regards to transitioning to something that may be phone-based or app-based for them as well? Because I think the younger generation is going to be there. I think they already are there.
Yeah, I think that the transition to EHR was even harder just because there's not as much tangible benefit in it. So everyone just felt like they were being forced to do it. Whereas this ideally has some attractive things that are not as big a technological jump, but just vastly improve things.
All right, so we're almost done. I got two more things I want to ask. So I'm going to put Dr. Neal on the hot seat, and the reason being is he's the vice chief of staff, going to become the chief of staff. So this platform is designed to be a network for physicians and anyone who works with physicians. It is not designed to be another EHR. In other words, our goal is not to have a hospital system buy Clinician Core and put you on it. The whole goal is to create a physician-centric communication platform that puts you at the center, where you get to be the one who is in charge of or at least involved in the business of healthcare decision-making. So now my question is administrations all go by ROI. What's the return on investment? If we start having our people in this hospital use Clinician Core, do you think that the hospitals, do you think that there is going to be a significant improvement in employee retention, physician retention, if you're able to take a platform like this where you make the physicians at the center of the communication, or do you think there'll be too much pushback?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there may be some pushback in regards to that, but a couple things from maybe the administrative side is maybe supporting that push to do something like this will hold on to physicians that may have left. It may bring in more physicians into that medical community. But the other thing is, medical, chief of staff, vice chief of staff, we have funds. We have a lot of funds. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be through administration. We have funds that, we pay dues, and this could be also something that you could support it in that route in order to hold on to and have that communication if it's going to benefit all of us.
Dr. Soin, would you feel more comfortable as if the platform is in the hands and being paid for by the med staff versus the hospital? Would you feel more comfortable using it? You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
there you go.
I think if it's not controlled by them, just kind of funded by them, I think that's okay. I think it's just everybody wants to be a little safe. As Dr. Rao said, like anything in digital space, even in real life, if I talk a little loudly in my room, it's voices can go to the cath lab, and I can listen people in the cath lab, and I can listen what's going outside. So at the same time, I think it will really, if the med staff is paying for it, but it's not controlling it, I think it's a autonomous, like there's autonomy for the app. I think it should be okay.
There's enough autonomy that you would feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a return on investment for the hospital to be not necessarily pay for the app or buy the app, but do you think there's a return on investment? Because when you think about it, physicians don't operate in a vacuum. We have nurses, PAs, nurse practitioners, all these people that work with us to if we put the physicians at the center of the hub to communicate with everyone. Do you think there's a return on investment for the hospital? Do you think it would help the hospital financially?
I do think that, and I say this because a happier physician is a much more delight to deal with on any spectrum, like when you go into, and when you have a happy patient, then you have a loyal patient. Like it's like any other, things that you do in life. If you have relationships, and that's, I think physician and medicine was all about building relationships, right? And like my dad is still practicing, and like my granddad's patient and their family still know my families back in India. So I do think, absolutely, yes. I think there's a return on investment. I'm not sure how it's quantifiable, but if you have a happier workforce, it's proven everywhere in whichever business or industry you take, it produces good outputs. So I do feel that you will have a positive impact for sure.
Dr. Rao, you deal with the administration a lot. What do you think?
I mean, I would agree with all that said. I mean, I think I would feel more comfortable with medical staff as opposed to the hospital administration, even if it's just a funding relationship. Um, but I feel like this sort of thing, anything that reduces the noise just a little bit, is like Dr. Soin said, gonna make for a at least less unhappy, maybe not happy, but less unhappy physician. I would see organizations, even our larger organization of our national company, that has employs large groups of both ER docs and hospitalists, would see something like this as a benefit, because everybody knows we're doing like not necessarily secure stuff just to communicate with each other already. That's probably all I'll say about that. But boy, if there was just something like, why wouldn't administrations be happy with some way for doctors to communicate without jeopardizing anything?
All right, so one last question, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So we didn't talk a little bit. I want to just at least cover this a little bit. So one of the concepts of Clinician Core is we brought on this idea of an HCX, which is a healthcare exchange. But in our exchange, what it is a non-compliant space where you could connect with vendors, you can connect with each other, you can discuss these higher level topics of whatever it is, whether it's a new medication, a new cardiac device, a new surgical procedure, a new implantable device. But you can then take that conversation into a doctor's lounge and have, like, we all know what it's like to talk to a rep, like a pharmaceutical rep or a device rep. Oh my God, they're selling you everything. But then we can then take that conversation into a specialty section in the doc lounge and say, okay, now what do y'all think about this? Do you think would you use the HCX? Would you like that? We'll talk about Dr. Rao.
I mean, God, yes. I mean, like when I had a private practice, I eventually just barred the reps from coming in because I felt as being prostituted. But you still need to know about these new things, the new medications, new techniques, or a new procedure. So just to have, the Reddit of medicine to go and say, just plug that in, or ask about it. I mean, that seems like mom and apple pie to me.
Dr. Neal, would you use it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it'd be a good way to even get, evidence evidence in regards to any research on new medications that are out without having to wait for them to come and bring you lunch, and be able to communicate with them and other physicians in regards to their use of that medication.
So faster, better, being able to be in the front line of medicine.
Yeah, I would just say one thing in regards to that is that our communication with them would be one way, not necessarily them inundating us with messaging, hey, we got this out, because that would be a little bit too much. That would be a lot more noise than I would want from pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, we have actually looked at the discrete way. So you can communicate with them and they will just provide a profile. And that too, those profile will also be specialty specific. So if you're a surgeon, then only surgeon vendors can come and provide their profiles. And we control that so that it's not, and if you choose to go there and meet them or talk to them, that's your choice. But we are not allowing them to communicate because that defeats the whole purpose, right? Then they will be just so much bombarding. But this may help us to get some sort of sponsorship. So that way we don't put burden on the physician side.
Dr. King, would you use the HCX?
Yeah, it kind of exists already with a couple online groups for robotic surgery. It's just a cool way you post your videos and like, oh, that's how that guy does it. Oh, here's how you use this new mesh or new suture, and just to see how other people do it. It's a real quick and easy way just to pop it up on your phone before you there is something to watch it on YouTube and then go try it. We do that a lot in robotic surgery for sure, and laparoscopic surgery, because it just lends itself to that. It's video recorded, video based. So that would definitely be a cool thing.
So a similar concept, you reach out to the vendor and they could provide information for you. Again, one-way street, but they would provide the information you need.
And all the Da Vinci devices are linked together, and you can actually, with the newer systems, you upload your video to the cloud, and then you could download it on your app or whatever and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. How would you manage this particular problem robotically? So yeah, that would lend itself very well for that platform for sure.
Dr. Soin, thoughts on the HCX section?
Yeah, I think, how there's some like even on UpToDate, like if we can have like something like what's new, and like if we have even by specialty, like if something is new coming up. I remember I was talking to Neal the other day, and we were doing a lot of leadless pacemakers, and I said like how such a small thing, is there and still able to sustain so much battery life within it. And he was explaining it to me. And like, sometimes, when you're talking to your patients, and I mean, not a cardiologist, but they ask, hey, what's happening? But it's so fascinating, like these things are coming up. And if you can get a head start to have an understanding what's going on in the medicine world, so you can even sometimes offer advice, okay, we may have these options available, but we will get. So it'll be I think it'll be a great addition to the app for sure.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up because our hour's up. But I want to thank all of you. I mean, you took time out of your day. You guys are all really busy. I get it. So I just want to thank you all for coming out. A lot of great insight, a lot of great validation, a lot of stuff we haven't thought about. So I'll turn it over to Neeraj to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation actually proved that when physicians come together, narrative changes. That's what I see it. We get more as your community, we can restore that clarity. I mean, it's fascinating to understand exactly each one of your perspective, and it feels like there is a purpose of this kind of discussions and this kind of clarity what you provide us, and I think it motivates us to provide this app so that, like one of you said, even if we can add 5%, make it your life easier, that itself is a win, right? So we are hoping we can get you really what we are talking and what we are promising. But thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to understand. It's a beginning of the discussion, right? So as we get closer, obviously you will get the first shot and get the testing and get all that features but we have the screenshots, we have the whole app virtually, we have the whole understanding of how this will work. So whatever Dr. Halow is conveying you, this is exactly how we have envisioned, and this is how we are designing it. So looking forward to have more discussion to get your inputs and your understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks for
Enjoy the
having
rest
us.
of your day.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Take care.